This is the MMA Brief Podcast, recapping the world of mixed martial arts every single week, with your host, Brandon Johansson.
Welcome back to the MMA Brief, recapping UFC 208 from Brooklyn, New York, the third UFC event since the legalization of MMA in New York. Kind of a lackluster card. I'm joined today by my friend, Jaws. Jaws is going to be here this episode with us. And let's get right into recapping the fights. Pretty terrible card when it comes to finishes. One finish on the card. 10 fights, 9 decisions. Decisions usually aren't always a bad thing. Some of the greatest UFC fights of all time have been decisions. Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonnar, Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit. So decision doesn't always mean a bad thing, but these fights just didn't really deliver. In comparison, we've been seeing a lot of special cards back to back to back, with not many cards like this in recent memory. I'm just going to skip the prelims because I really didn't see anything that got my attention. I heard people online call a couple of them really good fights. I didn't really agree. They were all decisions. No one seemed like they were putting themselves out there. And really the first fight on the pay-per-view, Jim Miller versus Dustin Poirier, pivotal matchup in the 155-pound weight class, was the first to deliver. Ended up winning fight of the night. It was the best fight of the night, by far. Battle back and forth. Jim Miller, really aggressive with leg kicks. Really fucked up Dustin Poirier's legs. And he also fucked up his own instep. His top of his foot was fucked up. The skin was busted. I don't know the severity of that injury. But Dustin Poirier has been medically suspended for 6 months. Whatever happened to his leg, it looked nasty. Remember that?
Yeah, it looked like it broke in half.
Yeah, it was pretty fucked up.
Bump.
Something with those leg kicks, man. Jim Miller just kept going back to him. Dustin Poirier ended up getting the decision victory, and as I mentioned, it won fight of the night. After that, Jacare Souza finished Tim Boetsch in the first round by Kimura. I had a feeling once the fight hit the ground, it was going to be a short night for Tim Boetsch. He looked pretty good on his feet in the first couple minutes, but once it hit the deck, Jacare is just world class, couldn't be denied. He got that arm, made it look easy. He's the number 3 middleweight in the UFC right now. Just really hungry to fight, keep fighting. Doesn't really want to wait around. The champion Michael Bisping just coming off surgery, so he won't be getting a title shot anytime soon, it would appear, as Yoel Romero is ahead of him in the rankings, and Yoel Romero owns a victory over him just less than a year ago. So Jacare's in a tough spot. He wants to keep being active. He wants to keep fighting. He wants to get to that title. That was a good fight. So Poirier and Miller and Jacare Boetsch had some exciting things happen in those fights. But then Anderson Silva versus Derek Brunson, controversial fight. Derek Brunson, if you look at all the stats at the end of it, landed 2 takedowns to 0 from Anderson Silva. He outlanded him in head strikes. He appeared to win the fight. Anderson Silva went vintage and pulled out some of his classic taunting routine. A lot of dancing and stuff. I got very excited. I was like, oh my God, he's back. I think Derek Brunson got robbed, probably. And it was Anderson Silva's first victory in 5 years, which really put that into perspective, because I remember the night when he got knocked out. It didn't seem like it was 5 years ago. So obviously he had that win against Nick Diaz overturned because of his positive drug test. So yeah, last time that he won a fight wasn't even in the middleweight division. It was against Stephan Bonnar at 205. That was the last time he seemed invincible. He egged Stephan Bonnar in, told him, go ahead, hit me with your best shots. He put his back against the cage and just basically let Stephan Bonnar think he was teeing off on Anderson Silva. Never really hit him with anything clean, and eventually Anderson darted in with a vicious knee to the body that crumpled Stephan Bonnar like we'd really never seen before. That was his last win. A long time ago, 5 years. I remember watching that pay-per-view at Jaws' place. Remember that one?
No,
Yeah, dude. It's your old apartment.
that was a long time ago.
5 years ago. So that fight didn't quite deliver like everybody wanted, kind of like the rest of the card. And finally, we work our way up to the main event, the inaugural women's featherweight title match between Holly Holm, a very decorated boxer and kickboxer, and Germaine de Randamie, a multiple-time world Muay Thai champion. I think she was 46-0 in Muay Thai in her life. Two great strikers. Wasn't that great of a fight. A lot of what was talked about after the fight was the late shots from Germaine de Randamie after the bell. Not once, but twice. I believe it was the second round. In the third round, might have been third and fourth. Point is, she took a swing after the bell, and then the next round she took two swings after the bell. No point deduction, no warning from the referee. The New York State Athletic Commission really got a bad rap because they're the ones who appoint the referees, not the UFC, and they put a referee in there that didn't have a lot of big fight experience, in a lot of people's opinion, and they think he blew it. But what would have been worse for the UFC is the point deduction would have led to a draw, and no one would have been crowned champion, and it would have really been the worst UFC pay-per-view I can remember. So they were fortunate enough to have Germaine de Randamie crowned, and now there's a matchup to look forward to if Cris Cyborg gets cleared of all of her performance-enhancing drug suspension rumors. The USADA had flagged her for potential doping, and now it seems that what she was taking was actually therapeutic and for her health condition, whatever it may be. So she's going to get back in there a lot sooner than everyone thought, because you think Cyborg popped again for performance enhancer, she's going to get screwed for 2 years. She's not going to be able to fight. But it seems like she's going to be back. She's going to fight Germaine de Randamie. Two great strikers. It's important to remember the last time Cyborg lost was in a kickboxing fight, stand-up only, against a world-class striker, and they were using the bigger gloves, so this is going to be different, and we'll just have to see what Germaine can do. Cyborg is obviously, I think, the favorite.
It's just a picture of Germaine punching Holly in the face.
That's one thing that the UFC can actually build on, is that Germaine is a good striker, and she might be a good matchup for Cyborg, because Cyborg's ran through all the opponents that the UFC has put in front of her, that Invicta put in front of her, and Strikeforce. I mean, she's just an animal. I think it's really funny now to look back and think about the matchup between Ronda Rousey and Cyborg, what it looked like, because everyone would say that Ronda Rousey had more than a chance. Everyone would think that she would win when Ronda was in her dominant prime. But now looking at Ronda's losses, knockout losses, and Cyborg's style, I think it's safe to say that Cyborg would have gotten the better of Ronda probably pretty early. Cyborg has a chance now, if she could beat Germaine, to become the new women's dominant and take that. I'm excited about women's MMA at all three weight classes right now in the UFC. 115 pounds, I really like 135 pounds. With now Amanda Nunes as the champion, she looks like a dominant champion, but there's a lot of contenders. They're all exciting divisions. And then Joanna Jędrzejczyk, obviously in the strawweight 115-pound division. So this new division, 145 pounds, a lot of people think isn't that stacked. There isn't as much talent, but I think it's only a matter of time. Girls that were cutting down to 135 will go up to 145. They'll bring in talent from Invicta or other organizations. And Cyborg's a big enough star that she makes that whole division legitimate. So women's MMA is it's looking very optimistic, I feel. Especially when you have someone like Cris Cyborg and her fighting style a part of that. There's been a lot of rumors going around. Obviously, Michael Bisping has not locked down a fight. The rumor was Yoel Romero, seemingly the number one contender, after knocking out Chris Weidman, of course, former champion. Bisping has not signed the fight and says that he was offered a fight with George St. Pierre before George could no longer come to an agreement with the UFC on his return. So there's a lot of rumors swirling around the internet saying that George St. Pierre versus Michael Bisping is going to happen. Nothing concrete right now. That'd be an interesting fight. I think stylistically it's very interesting. You know, hardcore UFC fans would be very interesting too, because Michael Bisping just passed George St. Pierre for the most wins in UFC history. So George has a chance to go in there and tie him, I think, if he can beat him. Point is, they're both been around a long time, but I think stylistically for George, Michael Bisping's interesting. His boxing is really good, stand up, and his takedown defense is very good. And I'd like to see that fight, but just a rumor at this point. We're gonna hopefully find out George St. Pierre is coming back soon, and it might be Nick Diaz. I heard it might be Nick Diaz. We'll see if he comes back at all. Rafael dos Anjos making his move up to welterweight. The former 155-pound champion now moving up a weight class. Said the weight cut really just diminished him. And he's eyeing fights with both Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz. So he's shooting for the moon with his first fight at welterweight. Is that a good idea? I don't know. He's coming off to back-to-back losses, getting knocked out in the first round by Eddie Alvarez to lose his title. And then some would say a close decision to El Cucuy. I thought that El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson clearly beat him, but it was a close fight. There was an eye poke incident, so Rafael dos Anjos feels that even though he has back-to-back losses, he can get in there, hop in a new division, and really make things happen. Rafael dos Anjos should feel good about his move up to welterweight. Looking at the success of Donald Cowboy Cerrone, what he had done in the welterweight division, he holds 2 wins over Cowboy. So if Cowboy can shoot up to the number 5 welterweight in the world in just a matter of time, I think RDA is feeling that maybe he can do similar things and fight some tough guys and get himself right in the mix, hopefully at 170. From what it sounds like. We'll see. There was a time there where Rafael dos Anjos looked like a killer. He was running through everybody's favorite fighter. I know he did that to mine, Anthony Pettis, and just everyone. He was Benson Henderson. He was running through people. Cowboy Cerrone twice. There was a time where he was a monster, and I don't know if he'll ever be there again, but hopefully the move up to 170, he feels stronger, he doesn't deplete his body, and we'll see where he goes and see what fight he gets. Now we're going to preview Bellator 172 this Saturday, live and free on Spike TV. Matt Mitrione versus Fedor Emelianenko. Josh, who do you like in this fight? You like Fedor or do you like Matt?
They're both good, but sometimes one's better than the other, and I like Fedor because he's a foreign-sounding guy, but Matt Mitrione can throw bricks.
That's very true. Very true points about both things. Fedor, arguably the greatest of all time.
Mitrione's got a glass jaw, too.
Oh, he's calling Matt Mitrione. He's saying he's got a glass jaw. He's been knocked out. But, man, Fedor's old, and that's the argument I'm making. I actually favor Matt Mitrione in this fight. I'd like to see Fedor win, but we'll see. Usually don't get into opinions, but I thought I'd ask you how you felt. You're going Fedor. Your team Fedor. You know, Donald Trump's a big Fedor fan.
Fedor. He's got experience.
Matt Mitrione throws bricks, though, like you said. We're going to find out this Saturday. The card actually is pretty good, probably the best Bellator card in recent memory. Of course, that's the main event. You also have Patricky Pitbull versus Josh Thompson, the former Strikeforce champion and UFC veteran. He's got one of the best UFC knockouts of all time, that head kick on Eve Edwards. So 2 legitimate 155-pound world-class competitors. That one should be really good. Also, Czech Congo versus Ali Thompson. And Josh Koscheck making his Bellator debut against Mauricio Alonso. So, yeah, actually some fights that I want to see this Saturday on Spike TV. And then on Sunday, we've got UFC Fight Night 105 from Halifax, up in Canada, Derek Lewis versus Travis Brown, the Black Beast versus Hapa. And Jazzy just pulled up the tail of the tape. Let me see. Derek Lewis is the UFC's most active heavyweight right now. I mean, he's been fighting so much. Travis Brown's going to have a slight leg reach advantage, but the overall reach and the arms is going to be even. Both going to come in about the same in weight. Derek Lewis is like 4 inches shorter. Derek Lewis only has one decision on his record, and that's to Roy Big Country Nelson. He goes for the knockout, and I think he has one submission on his record. Travis Brown hasn't looked as good lately, but he still possesses some crazy knockout power, and he's really athletic. He's got extreme athleticism for a man his size, and Derek Lewis has been knocked out before. So this is the number 8 heavyweight in the world against the number 9, Derek Lewis being number 8. And it should be a good heavyweight showdown. Also on the card, Johnny Hendricks' middleweight debut against Hector Lombard. That should be a good fight. Hector Lombard's coming off 2 losses. His first 2 knockouts of his career. He was TKO'd by Neil Magny, pounded to piss. And then Dan Henderson, of course, knocked him out with a head kick elbow combination. So he's looking to get back in the winner's circle. And Johnny Hendricks the same. Since he lost his belt to Robbie Lawler, he's lost to Calvin Gastelum, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. 3 straight losses. Is that he needs to get back in the win column. Hector Lombard needs to get back in the win column. And it's at one point that was supposed to be the headliner. And you got guys on multiple losses headlining. That's going to be an awesome scrap because they both have crazy knockout power. It's a good matchup for Hendricks because Hector Lombard's a very small middleweight. And I don't mean that muscularly. I mean he's only, I don't know what 69 inches is. I wish they would just have the feet in inch measurement. That's my one criticism. But point is that the same height. They're going to obviously weigh in at the same, and Hector's going to have a slight reach advantage. So I'm expecting a knockout in that one. If it's not a knockout, man, those two have descended so far from where they once were because Hector Lombard, you're talking about arguably one of the most explosive fighters. I can't think of anybody. The way he knocked people out, very Tyron Woodley-esque. It's 5 feet 9 inches. Thank you, Evan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
They're both 5'9", which is pretty short for a middleweight. So that's the co-main event, and there's a couple other decent fights. I like Carla Esparza versus Ronda Marcos. Both were in the Ultimate Fighter women's season they had. I don't know. Carla Esparza ended up winning. Familiar with both fighters, 115 pounds. Should be a good scrap. Sarah McMahon versus Gina Mazzani. Mazzani's undefeated, 4-0. I'm guessing this is her UFC debut. She's black. She's blacked out, like she doesn't have a real picture on the website. So I'm guessing it's her UFC debut. Sam Cecilia, always a very entertaining fighter, win, lose, or get knocked the fuck out. Is fighting Gavin Tucker, which I'm guessing is also his UFC debut, but he's 9-0. He's from Canada. Makes sense to have him on this card. That one should be decent. It's an FS1 card on Sunday, and it should be decent. The heavyweight fight should deliver. I don't see why it wouldn't. Oh, I do like Nordine Talib. I've never heard. I don't know. I'm not even going to attempt to pronunciate his fucking opponent's name. Santiago. Oh man, I don't think I can do it. You want to try?
I'm not gonna try it.
Yeah, it's hard. Okay, so come back next week. Me and Jaws will be breaking down the fights. Both cards we just talked about: Fedor versus Matt Mitrione, Travis Brown versus the Black Beast Derek Lewis. We're gonna have a nice Saturday, Sunday weekend of heavyweight showdowns across 2 promotions. Come back next week. We'll talk all about it. Peace.